Lara Ries is a director of Border Security and Immigration at the Heritage Foundation. She's also a former acting DHS Deputy Chief of Staff. Lora, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Vince, for having me on.
Tell me, I mean, this decision by the Biden administration to grant all of these hundreds of thousands of work permits to illegal immigrants, that's only, I mean, am I wrong? That's only going to make things worse, isn't it?
It is going to make things worse. And this is what the sanctuary city mayors like New York City Mayor Adams has been asking for, and it's just going to make his situation worse. There are 5 things illegal aliens want when they come to the U.S. One of those is to work, in addition to enter and to stay and to send money home and to bring family here. And if you're going to give them work authorization cards and now expedite it, then you're giving them what they really want, which is cover to work here, even though the law says, you're not supposed to hire illegal aliens.
Right.
So this flow will continue because it's no policy change. It's just doubling down.
And you mentioned that they're all going to receive official paperwork from the government saying that they're okay to work here. This is not something that this isn't a law, is it? This is just Joe Biden deciding on his own to grant this status.
Well, there's something in the Immigration Act called temporary protected status. But what that is intended for is for populations who happen to be in the U.S. when something bad happens back home, like a natural disaster or ongoing armed conflict. And what the generally Democrat administrations, although Republican administrations have done this as well, is they just keep extending and expanding this program for lots of countries. Right now, the Biden administration is up to 16 countries that it gives this protection, and there's nothing as permanent as a temporary protected status or a temporary program. So they'll just keep extending this, and they keep moving the date. So if you got here a little bit more recently, the cutoff is end of July, you too can have this temporary quote-unquote lawful cover and a work card.
I mean, and it seems to me that the rationale for granting the so-called temporary protective status has gotten more and more loose through the years. There are all, like political turmoil. Political turmoil is a rationale for TPS, then I deserve TPS if that's the case, because we're experiencing it here.
There's some that still have TPS that go back to 1998 Hurricane Mitch. So yes, this is not serious. But as a default, administrations keep extending it. During the Trump administration, we terminated several of these programs. And then, of course, the left took us to court, and it got tied up in court until the Biden administration came in and said, no, just kidding, we want to extend them. So that's why we're up to 16 countries right now. And on top of that, for Venezuelans, they also get their own mass parole program. So, if you're not already in the U.S. and get TPS, you can be outside the U.S., claim you're Venezuelan, and then be paroled into the U.S. and also given a work card. So, it's good to. We're being very generous. I'll put it that way.
Yes, and the Biden administration is actively trying to make it easier to get across our border too. So you have. The state of Texas has been assembling razor wire on the border to try and prevent people from even attempting to make the journey. But we see video overnight shared by Governor Greg Abbott of Biden administration officials, Border Patrol agents tasked by the Biden administration, are now cutting down the razor wire and opening it up to allow waves of humanity to come in. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, the only similar thing, and again, it was in Texas and during this administration, is when the National Guard, put there by Texas, turned migrants away, and then the CBP officials went and opened gates for them to come in. We've also seen this, though, when the former governor, put up shipping containers to fill gaps in the border wall. The feds came in and sued them and said, no, take those down. Don't you dare secure the border. And the feds also did the same thing when Texas Governor Abbott did it with the floatables. The feds sued. It's tied up in court right now. But, I mean, they might as well just say we want the border open because every act says that. So
my impression was that the Constitution requires the federal government to protect the states against invasion. Don't they have a constitutional obligation to help Texas?
Yes, this is an interesting issue, and Governor Abbott, in a letter, declared this to be an invasion, but it hasn't quite come to a head. If Texas were to deport illegal aliens back to Mexico, then the feds would swoop in and sue him for that, perhaps arrest the agents, and then this would be tested in court. This is a novel issue about whether states could deport for invasion. Frankly, at this point, I think it's an issue that needs to be tested.
Yeah, Article 4, Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion. Greg Abbott should test this today. Greg Abbott should start deporting people immediately and see if the Biden administration wants to put this in the court system.
Right. Some will argue, well, when that was written, that was about invasion by armies. But I don't think the founders envisioned what we're seeing today as a scenario to include that in when they were writing the Constitution. So yes, it's a novel issue, but we are to the point now where it needs to be tested and examined.
Let me ask Lara Ries, is it possible to even get our arms around the number of illegal foreign nationals who are now in the country?
Well, we know what CBP's encountered just in this administration, and that's over 7 million illegal aliens. And we know that this administration is not deporting very many at all. So we have to say the vast majority of that 7 million are staying here. And that doesn't even include the 1.6, 1.7 known gotaways that evaded the Border Patrol. Now, the number that used to be cited pre-Biden of illegal aliens here was anywhere from 11 million to 21 million. So tack on maybe another 7 million, and that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, which 20 to 30 million people is a lot in a country of just over 300 million. That you get up towards that higher end, that's 10% of the country's population, illegal foreign nationals.
It's another state. It's a whole other state worth of people.
You know, Karine Jean-Pierre said today the following. She said, quote, "The president has done everything that he can to deal with this issue." What does that mean?
Well, he's dealing with it, but the way he's dealt with it is to open the border wide open. And this is what the left is all in for. They believe in mass migration. They are weaponizing it. They have erased not just our border, but they've erased the line between legal and illegal immigration. They claim it is all lawful. And they want a mass amnesty. In effect, they already have it because they're letting these people stay here and giving them work cards. And if Congress were to give them actual green cards, that's just icing on the cake. But that is what the left is seeking to do, is just pile up the numbers so much to pressure Congress to give these populations green cards. And then, of course, meanwhile, they are trying to get them to vote at city and state level, and even in some cases federal level.
I know that some of these Democrat mayors have raised concerns about their city resources being stretched thin by these illegal foreign nationals, but I do feel like not enough conversation is happening around the actual death that is occurring as a result of this border crisis. We've got reports overnight of a 3-year-old drowning in the Rio Grande, attempting to get into the country. Last week, we had a woman die after she fell from the border wall in California. And you have had countless bodies show up in the water and on the border that basically go unnoticed by most of the press, in addition to, of course, the nearly 100,000 or over 100,000 Americans who died due to drug overdoses, many as a result of the cartels injecting that poison into the country. Lora, you know, how critical is it that Americans be aware of just how much death is associated with this?
Well, Biden has been making a lot of records when it comes to the border, and the number of border deaths and the number of search and rescues our agents have had to carry out are just some of those awful records that Biden has made. And Secretary Mayorkas of Homeland Security keeps saying his policies are safe, orderly, and humane, but they're anything but. They're not humane for Americans who are dying from the fentanyl or from the gang members getting in and killing people, both Americans and migrants. And it's not humane for the migrants who are in the hands of their cartels and getting raped along the way or drowning or left abandoned in awful weather conditions. So there are so many grounds that Secretary Mayorkas warrants to be impeached, and the inhumanity is just one of them. And where is he, by the way? He seems to be MIA as the border is seeing, again, record numbers of illegal aliens. I mean, the numbers right now are just crushing. They're up to about almost 10,000 a day again.
In September of 2021, the first year of the Biden administration, Mayorkas announced that the policy of the United States will be to no longer deport people solely because they are, quote, undocumented. If you're an illegal immigrant, so long as you don't commit other crimes, you are not to be deported, said Alejandro Mayorkas. How much has that policy had an impact on the current crisis?
Well, it kind of sums up this administration's view regarding immigration enforcement writ large. But it also contradicts his own memo that he put out. He put out an enforcement memo that says we're going to prioritize spies, terrorists, some aggravated felons, and if you entered illegally after the election of 2020, basically. But clearly, they're not enforcing the law against all these illegal aliens showing up after the election. And they're also turning ICE on its head. Instead of using ICE to find these people, even the most serious criminals, and deport them, they're turning ICE into a agency to give social services to more illegal aliens. This isn't good for Americans. It's not safe. So this is going to blow up.
Yes.
I mean, this administration is running on dumb luck, and their luck's going to run out at some point.
I think you're right. So on this particular issue, I know the fundamental question for all of us is, what's the motivation for this? Why is the Biden administration doing this? I know a lot of people suspect, and I'm among them in terms of like my actual belief, is that they think that in the long run this will be beneficial politically, that somehow by granting mass amnesty, everybody becomes Democrat voters, keeps them in power forever. What do you think the motivation is here?
It is political, and it's about power, and that can come in a number of different ways. It could be letting them vote in state and local elections. It could be letting them vote fraudulently through mail-in ballots, et cetera, all the different ways that election fraud occurs. But it's also about congressional districting. So the left successfully kept the U.S. citizenship question off of the U.S. Census, which means everybody is counted, and those numbers are used to apportion congressional districts, including green card holders, temporary visitors, and illegal aliens. So you have states like California with more congressional districts than they should have if we only used U.S. citizen numbers, and then other states which should have more representation.
Right. So next time we do a census based on all of these illegals flowing into New York City right now, that means New York City is likely to get even more congressmen, Democrat congressmen dedicated to just New York City.
That's right.
Okay. Well, that is one very good answer to this crazy saga. Lara Ries, thank you very much. Good to have you with us today, as always.